The sun scorched the cracked earth of Arroyo Seco with an unforgiving blaze, turning the town into a furnace where shadows fled and whispers became desperate prayers. Mara Silva stood in the back room of La Serena, the cantina she and Lucia frequented since childhood. The air inside was thick with dust and the heavy scent of stale beer and sweat, but under the dim light, the room offered a fragile refuge from the relentless desert heat. Lucia sat across from her, fingers nervously twisting the hem of her blouse. Benito Cruz leaned against the wall, his rifle resting beside him, eyes sharp and scanning the street beyond the cracked windows. Their voices were low, urgent, as they discussed the impossible, rallying the fractured town against the rituals that had claimed so many children, including Mara's brother. "We can't keep hiding," Mara said, her voice steady despite the knot tightening in her chest. "People are scared, but they need to know there's another way. We can't let the Hollow One keep feeding on us like this." Lucia nodded, though her eyes flickered with doubt. "Some will listen, but many are too afraid. Father Rosales and Elias hold too much sway. They've convinced most that the sacrifices are necessary, that defiance means death for us all." Benito's voice was gravelly, shaped by years tracking game through the merciless deserts. "Fear is a powerful weapon, but it's not invincible. We've seen crack small ones, but real. We just have to push harder, make the town remember what it means to hope." Outside, the sun beat down mercilessly, painting the world in harsh light that revealed every wrinkle in the weathered faces of the townsfolk. Mara's mind raced with memories of Tomas, his sun-bleached hair and wide eyes, drawn inexplicably to the well's edge. That innocent curiosity had led him to the abyss. Now, that same abyss threatened to swallow them all. The next morning, Mara, Lucia, and Benito moved through the town like shadows themselves, gathering whispers of dissent. In the cracked streets and under the awnings of shuttered shops, small groups huddled, their conversations laced with fear and hope. The desert wind carried the scent of dust and desperation, mingling with the faint murmur of the well's dark legend. But the town was a tinderbox, and it didn't take long for sparks to ignite. At midday, the square became a battleground of voices. Loyalists to the old ways, draped in sun-bleached robes and clutching talismans, confronted those emboldened by Mara's message. Shouts echoed against adobe walls, accusations flying like arrows in the dry air. "You would condemn us all." Elias's voice boomed, his weathered face flushed with anger. "The well has sustained Arroyo Seco for generations. Without sacrifice, we perish, or we perish because of it." Mara shot back, eyes blazing. "How many more children must vanish before you see the truth? Tomasi was one of us, and now he's gone." The crowd's murmur grew into a cacophony of fear and defiance. The desert heat pressed down, suffocating, as if the earth itself weighed on their souls. Some stepped back, unwilling to break the cycle. Others, inspired by Mara's courage, stepped forward. In the midst of the chaos, Father Rosales appeared, his gaunt figure framed by the sun's glare. "Peace," he called, voice thin but commanding. "This conflict serves the Hollow One. We must trust in the path laid out for us." His words were a venomous reminder of the institutional power that upheld the rituals. Mara's heart clenched, knowing the fight was far from over. As dusk fell, Mara found herself walking alone along the dried riverbed, the cracked earth crunching beneath her boots. The sun dipped behind jagged hills, casting the desert in a bruised palette of purples and oranges. The silence was profound, broken only by the whispering wind that carried with it the scent of sage and forgotten promises. She closed her eyes, the weight of the day pressing down like the desert sky. Doubt gnawed at her resolve. Could she truly rally a town so steeped in fear and superstition? Or was she destined to become another lost soul, swallowed by the well's insatiable hunger? But beneath the doubt, a small ember of hope kindled. Tomas's face, bright and innocent, flashed in her mind. She could not let his light be extinguished in vain. Later, beneath a star-studded sky, Mara, Lucia, and Benito convened with a handful of allies in the shadow of a mesquite tree. A single lantern flickered between them, casting dancing shadows that seemed to reach out toward the endless darkness beyond. Plans were whispered, strategies formed. Each voice carried the weight of desperation and the fragile hope of change. The desert stretched boundless around them, a vast silent witness to their rebellion. "We may not win tomorrow," Benito said quietly, "but every step forward is a crack in the old way." Mara nodded, feeling the first true flicker of resolve in days. "Then we make those cracks into a chasm, for Tomas, for all the children." As the night deepened, the desert held its breath alongside them. The well's dark hunger waited below, but above, beneath the indifferent stars, a fragile defiance took root. The desert sun beat down mercilessly on Arroyo Seco, its relentless heat a cruel reminder of the town's parched spirit. Mara Silva stood at the cracked edge of the town square, the dried-up well looming behind her like a silent sentinel of dread. Around her, the townsfolk moved with a mixture of fear and resignation, their whispered prayers to the hollow well blending with the dry wind that swept through the streets. Beside Mara, Lucia Torres shifted nervously, her dark eyes darting toward the shadows that clung to the corners of the square. "We can't keep waiting," Mara said, her voice low but firm. "If we don't act soon, more children will vanish. Tomas, he's still out there, somewhere beneath the darkness." Lucia nodded, biting her lip. "I've been trying to shield the younger ones, but it's dangerous. People are watching, and the rituals are becoming more intense. The well's demands grow each day." Benito Cruz, standing a little apart, scanned the horizon with a hunter's wary gaze. His rugged face was set in grim determination. "The desert itself seems to be turning against us. The Hollow One's hunger isn't just a superstition anymore. I've seen shadows moving where no one should be. The ground whispers beneath our feet." Mara clenched her fists, the weight of their words settling like stones in her chest. "We have to find a way to break this cycle. The town is drowning in its own fear, feeding the well's hunger with every sacrifice." That evening, Mara sought out Elias Marquez in the dim confines of his home. The town elder's weathered face was etched with lines of sorrow and secrecy. Dust motes danced in the fading light as Elias pulled an ancient, leather-bound book from beneath a pile of faded manuscripts. "These texts hold the truth," Elias said, his voice heavy with years of guilt. "The sacrifices began long before any of us were born. The Hollow One is sustained by our fear, by our blind obedience. Every vanished child feeds its insatiable thirst." Mara's eyes searched his face. "Is there a way to stop it? To end this nightmare?" Elias shook his head slowly. "Breaking the curse means breaking the town. The rituals are the fragile thread holding us together. Without them, Arroyo Seco would fall into chaos and despair." A chill crawled up Mara's spine despite the desert heat. Outside, the wind whispered through the cracked windows, carrying an almost imperceptible sound, a dark presence lurking just beyond the veil of night. Days passed, each one heavier than the last. Mara's dreams were invaded by the Hollow One's shifting shadows, its endless thirst consuming all light and hope. She felt its gaze in every dark corner, a suffocating dread that clung to her skin. One night, beneath a starless sky, Mara confronted one of her closest allies. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound, a knife twisting in the fragile hope she had nurtured. "You've been speaking to Father Roselles," Mara accused, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. The man's eyes flickered with guilt and fear. "I'm trying to protect you, Mara. You don't understand what you're up against. The well's hunger is beyond us all." Betrayal hung between them like the desert dust, choking and relentless. As dawn crept over the horizon, Mara stood alone by the well, the first rays of sunlight casting long, haunted shadows. The town stirred behind her, caught in the unyielding grip of tradition and fear. Yet within Mara, a flicker of defiance remained, a fragile hope that one day the children of Arroyo Seco might be free from the hollow well's terrible price. But for now, the thirst was unquenched, and the darkness waited patiently beneath the cracked earth. The battle for Arroyo Seco's soul was far from over, and Mara knew the price of hope was steep, soaked in betrayal, loss, and the ever-looming shadow of the Hollow One. The sun beat down mercilessly on Arroyo Seco, turning the cracked earth into a furnace and casting long, sharp shadows beneath the sparse desert scrub. In the town square, a restless crowd had gathered around the dried-up well, now more a monument to dread than a source of life. The air was thick with heat and an oppressive silence that spoke louder than any words. Mara Silva stood at the edge of the gathering, her heart pounding in rhythm with the slow, deliberate steps of the approaching procession. Children were absent, their disappearance a heavy weight on every face. The townsfolk's eyes flickered nervously toward the well's gaping man, abyss of darkness that seemed to swallow hope itself. Mara's gaze never wavered from Elias Marquez, the town elder, who moved forward with the solemnity of one who carried the burden of centuries. Behind him followed Father Rosales, his gaunt figure clad in a faded cassack, a man whose sermons had become the twisted backbone of the well's cult worship. Mara's voice cut through the silence, sharp and unwavering. "This ends today," she declared, stepping onto the cracked stones with a resolve that drew the eyes of every witness. "No more children will be taken. No more lies will bind us to this cursed well." A murmur rippled through the crowd, a mixture of fear and disbelief. Ilias's weathered face tightened, the lines of age and guilt deepening. "You do not understand, Mara," he said, his voice gravelly with years of suppressed sorrow. "This is our survival. The sacrifice must continue. Survival at what cost?" Mara challenged, her eyes blazing. "How many more must vanish into the darkness? How long will we let this Hollow One feed on our children and our souls?" Father Roselles stepped forward, his voice low and commanding. "The well's demands are divine. To question is to invite ruin. Submission is our salvation." "Salvation," Mara replied, stepping closer. "You preach obedience while condemning our children to oblivion. I will not stand by and watch this cycle repeat." The tension thickened, the air crackling with unspoken threats and ancient fear. Elias raised a trembling hand, signaling for calm. "There are truths you do not know," he confessed, his voice breaking. "The well is no mere hole in the earth. It is a gateway, a hunger born from forgotten waters and desperate prayers. Each sacrifice feeds the Hollow One, and in return, it grants us this barren land's harsh mercy." Mara's breath caught as the weight of his words settled over her. The town's fate, her brother's disappearance, the dread that clung like a second skin, all intertwined in a tapestry of despair and blind faith. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the square, The ritual preparations continued with grim inevitability. Candles were lit, and the scent of burning sage mingled with the dry desert air. Mara found Lucia and Benito at her side, their faces pale but resolute. "We can't let this happen," Lucia whispered, clutching Mara's arm. "Not again." Benito nodded, his steady gaze scanning the restless crowd. The desert itself seems to hold its breath. Together, they moved as one, ready to challenge the darkness that had claimed their town for generations. The last ritual was upon them, a crucible where hope and horror would collide beneath the scorching sky. Mara's defiance echoed in the stillness, a fragile spark against the abyss. But as the well's dark hunger stirred beneath, the true battle was only beginning, a fight not just for Tomas, but for the soul of Arroyo Seco itself. And somewhere deep below, the Hollow One waited, its eyes like pits of endless thirst, watching, hungering, and ready to consume all who dared to defy the shadowed covenant. The sun set in a blaze of fiery red, casting the well into deeper darkness, as the town held its breath, poised on the edge of oblivion. The sun hung high and merciless over Arroyo Seco, its relentless heat pressing down on the cracked earth like a weight impossible to bear. Dust rose in faint spirals, caught in the dry breath of the desert wind, carrying with it the scent of parched soil and ancient secrets. Mara Silva's gaze fixed on the well at the town's heart, a hollow monument to despair and tradition. Today, she would confront the darkness that had stolen her brother, the well's insatiable hunger, and the blind faith that fed it. Around her, the small group she had gathered moved with tense determination. Lucia's hands trembled slightly, fingers twisting a faded scarf, while Benito's eyes scanned the horizon, muscles coiled in readiness. Elias had reluctantly agreed to come, his presence a silent acknowledgement of the gravity of their task. Mara's heart hammered, not just from the heat, but from the knowledge that this moment could change everything or doom them all. The townsfolk had gathered as they always did in the summer heat, clad in worn robes faded by sun and dust. Their faces were masks of solemnity, etched with lines of resignation and fear. A low chant began to rise, a steady rhythm that pulsed like a heartbeat through the sweltering air. It was the sound of generations bound by ritual and sacrifice, a dirge for the missing, a prayer for survival. Mara stepped forward, the cracked earth crunching beneath her boots. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady and clear despite the tremor of heat and dread in her chest. "This ends now," she declared, eyes blazing like coals. "We cannot feed this hollow hunger with our children any longer. There is no salvation in sacrifice, only endless loss." A murmur rippled through the crowd, like wind stirring dry leaves. Some faces twisted in shock, others hardened into scowls of anger. The old rituals were sacred, the town's fragile survival depended on them. But Mara's words planted seeds of doubt, thin shoots of rebellion struggling toward light. Father Roselle stepped forward, his gaunt figure casting a long shadow. His voice was sharp, trembling with a fury barely contained. "Blasphemy! You threaten the very fabric of our faith. The well demands obedience, and through it, we endure. To defy is to invite doom." The chant faltered, eyes darting between Mara and the priest, the air thick with tension. Sweat dripped into Mara's eyes, stinging, but she would not waver. The desert seemed to hold its breath, the parched earth beneath them humming with the weight of generations of fear and hope. In the sudden silence, a flicker of movement. Mara's allies seized the moment, disrupting the ceremonial fire that crackled weakly against the dry wind. Sparks rose and scattered, swallowed quickly by the dust. Chaos blossomed as voices clashed, some shouting prayers, others cries of rebellion. Mara's heart pounded with fierce hope and raw fear. The well's hunger had been challenged, its shadow momentarily broken, but the cost was unknown, the path ahead uncertain. The sun blazed overhead, relentless and unforgiving, as the desert bore witness to the first flicker of defiance, fragile, tenuous, but alive. Night would come, and with it, the darkness beneath the well. But tonight, amidst the cracked earth and whispered doubts, a spark had been struck. Mara's voice echoed, a promise and a warning. The cycle could be broken, but only if they dared to stand against the hollow shadows of their past. The desert wind carried that promise far and wide, into the hearts of those who dared to listen, and into the abyss that waited patiently below. The heat of the blazing sun made the cracked ground shimmer as Mara and her small band approached the ritual site. The well, dry and hollow, loomed like a dark scar at the town's center. Around it, the townsfolk gathered, their faces shadowed beneath wide-brimmed hats and scarves, their voices low and rhythmic in the ancient chant. Lucia's eyes flicked nervously to Mara. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered, voice tight with fear. Mara met her gaze, fierce and unwavering. "If we don't act now, nothing will change. Tomas is still down there, somewhere. We have to try." Benito scanned the gathering crowd, muscles taut beneath his worn shirt. "We don't have much time. Once this starts, it's harder to stop." The first words of Mara's declaration cut through the murmurs like a whip. "This ends now. No more children lost to this hollow curse." Gasps and murmurs erupted. Some stepped back, afraid. Others stared, eyes narrowing in suspicion or anger. Father Rosals's voice rose, sharp and condemning. "Blasphemy. The well demands sacrifice. Without it, we perish." The crowd's chant faltered, wavering between fear and defiance. Mara pressed on, her voice ringing out, "Blind faith has fed this darkness for too long. It's time to break free." Suddenly, the ceremonial fire sputtered as Benito threw a handful of dry brush onto it, sending sparks swirling into the dry air. The crowd scattered in confusion and outrage. Shouts filled the desert air, mingling with the dry wind and the distant cry of a hawk. Mara's heart thundered in her chest. This is our town, our children. We have a choice. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the cracked earth, the desert held its breath. Would hope survive the night? The desert night stretched out like a vast, unyielding shroud over Arroyo Seco, the stars obscured by a veil of parching heat that refused to dissipate even as the sun sank below the horizon. Mara stood at the edge of the cracked well, its once proud stone rim now fragmented and scorched, a dark monument to the town's deepest fears. Beside her, Lucia's fingers trembled slightly as she gripped a small amulet pressed close to her chest, while Benito's eyes scanned the shifting shadows with practiced vigilance. The oppressive silence was broken only by the distant whistle of the wind, carrying with it the scent of dry sand and bitter memories. Mara's heart pounded, her breath shallow and uneven as she recalled the knowledge Elias had entrusted to her, ancient texts inked in faded script, speaking of the Hollow One's insatiable thirst and the cost exacted by the well's dark hunger. Suddenly, the air thickened, the temperature dropping with a cruel sharpness that raised goosebumps along Mara's sun-baked skin. A ripple fractured the darkness at the well's center, a distortion as if reality itself were bending away from something utterly alien and malevolent. Shapes began to coalesce, shifting and writhing like smoke caught in a violent storm, their edges undefined and trembling with otherworldly energy. The Hollow One emerged, Its form was an ever-changing shadow, a mass of darkness that seemed to swallow the very light around it. Two deep pits of blackness, eyes that burned with an endless, aching thirst, fixed on Mara with a hunger that clawed at the edges of her sanity. The earth beneath their feet cracked and splintered, dust swirling into a furious tempest that screamed the town's long-forgotten laments. Mara's muscles tensed, the weight of the relics she carried grounding her despite the swirling chaos. She met the entity's gaze with a fierce determination born of desperation and love. A determination to protect her lost brother Tomas and all the children swallowed by this cursed place. Lucia stepped closer, her voice barely a whisper, but resolute. "We will not let it claim us tonight. Not this time." Benito tightened his grip on a hunting knife, the metal gleaming faintly in the moonlight. "It feeds on fear and silence. We fight it with defiance and truth." The Hollow One recoiled, its form contorting into a whirlwind of shadow and despair, lashing out with tendrils of darkness that twisted the very air and summoned visions of sacrifice long past. Mara's mind was assailed by images of children's faces, their eyes wide with terror and pleading, their voices drowned by the relentless desert wind. Pain flared sharp and sudden across Mara's chest, a psychic lash, a reminder of the cost of resistance. Yet she held firm, chanting fragments of the ancient incantations Elias had painstakingly translated, words meant to bind and repel the entity's insidious power. The desert's thirst became a living thing around them, a cruel dryness that clawed at their throats, a spiritual drought that mirrored the town's fractured soul. Each breath was a struggle, each heartbeat a defiant drum against the encroaching void. As the Hollow One's fury reached a crescendo, a sudden stillness fell. The dust settled, the shadows retracted, and for a fleeting moment, the first fragile droplets of moisture glistened on the cracked earth. Hope, delicate and trembling, flickered beneath the unforgiving night. But Mara knew this was only the beginning. The entity's punishment had been severe, its wrath unforgiving. The battle had been won, but the war for Arroyo Seco's soul was far from over. She turned to her allies, their faces illuminated by the pale moonlight, etched with exhaustion, but alive with resolve. "We've made it flinch," Mara said, voice steady despite the weariness. "Now we fight to keep it on the back foot." Lucia nodded, eyes shining with unshed tears. "For the children," for Tomas. Benito's grip on his knife tightened once more. "For the town we can still save." The well's lament echoed faintly on the wind, a mournful song of thirst and sacrifice, but beneath it, the promise of defiance beat strong and steady. The hollow darkness might hunger still, but so did the flame of resistance burning within Mara and those who dared to stand with her. Night deepened, and the desert held its breath, waiting, watching, as the fragile hope took root in the parched earth. The fight was not over, but the first cracks had formed in the curse's unyielding grasp, and Mara would not rest until the last child was free. The sun dipped low over Arroyo Seco, casting long, twisted shadows across the cracked earth where the town lay broken and weary. Mara Silva stood at the edge of the square, her eyes fixed on the hollow well at the Centaura Black Moor, swallowing the dying light, indifferent and eternal. The air was heavy with the acrid scent of dust and smoke, mingled with the distant murmurs of townsfolk who had gathered in restless clusters. The rebellion had fractured them. The fragile unity of Arroyo Seco splintered into shards of fear, anger, and despair. She felt the weight of it all pressing down, the scorching weight of the desert sun replaced by the cold oppression of uncertainty. The well's hunger was not sated. It lingered like a specter over every cracked wall and whispered prayer. The blood and sacrifice had not broken its hold. If anything, the darkness beneath seemed to grow, feeding on the town's fractured soul. Mara's hands clenched the worn edge of Tomas's shirt, the fabric soft and thin in her grasp. The memory of his wide, innocent eyes haunted her so, full of hope and trust before the abyss claimed him. Grief twisted deep inside her, a raw, aching pulse that throbbed beneath her ribs. But grief was no longer enough. It could not be. She had to find a way forward, even as the shadows of doubt and fear crept closer. Voices rose in the square, sharp and bitter, cutting through the heavy silence. Mara's gaze shifted to the crowd, where townsfolk argued with a fierceness born of desperation. Some accused her, openly blaming her for stirring unrest, for challenging the rituals that had kept Arroyo Seco alive for generations. Others whispered of change, of hope, trembling on the edge of belief. The lines were drawn, and Mara stood at the fault. Lucia Torres moved through the crowd with guarded steps, her dark eyes flickering with both anxiety and resolve. Benito Cruz followed closely, his steady presence a silent anchor in the storm. They had survived the confrontation, but the cost was etched deep into their faces. The rebellion had not brought salvation. It had only peeled back the layers of fear, exposing the raw nerves beneath. "We can't give up," Lucia whispered when she reached Mara, her voice trembling but fierce. "There are others, quiet ones, who want the same as us. Change, freedom from the well's shadow." Mara nodded, the weight of leadership settling heavier on her shoulders than ever before. "Then we fight not with fire or blades, but with truth. We must unravel the lies that bind this town before the well claims us all." But even as she spoke, the oppressive silence of the desert night pressed in, a reminder that the well's hunger was not just a curse, but a living, breathing force. It watched, waited, and fed on the fractures within. Later, Mara sat alone in the dim light of her home, the room thick with stale air and the scent of sweat and dust. The worn shirt of Tomas lay crumpled in her lap as she whispered promises into the dark. "I will break this. I will bring you back, no matter the cost." Her voice was barely more than a breath, fragile against the vast silence. But beneath that fragility burned a fierce determination, a stubborn flame refusing to be extinguished. Outside, the town simmered in uneasy quiet. The rebels scattered, the fearful retreated, and the well remained a gaping wound in the heart of Arroyo Seco, a reminder of all they had lost and all still at stake. In the shadowed alcove of an abandoned building, Lucia and Benito bent low over a flickering candle. Their whispered plans were cautious, their faces etched with tension. "We can't face the well alone," Benito murmured. "But together, maybe we stand a chance." Lucia's nod was slow, deliberate. "We'll gather those who still believe, those willing to fight for their children and their future. It's a fragile hope, but it's all we have." The candle's flame wavered, casting long, uncertain shadows. Outside, the desert wind stirred the dust, carrying with it the distant, almost imperceptible sound of the well's insatiable hunger. The fractured horizons of Arroyo Seco stretched before them, scarred, uncertain, but not yet broken. Mara's vow hung in the air, a silent challenge to the darkness beneath. The cycle could be broken. But to do so, they would have to face the abyss once more and confront the monstrous entity waiting in its depths. As night deepened, the town held its breath, caught between despair and defiance. The well watched, patient and eternal, as the children's disappearances continued in shadow. Mara's journey was far from over, and the desert's thirst whispered promises of both salvation and ruin. The horizon fractured, but the story was not finished. Mara Silva would stand against the darkness, even if it meant losing herself to the hollow well's endless hunger. And somewhere beneath the parched earth, the abyss waited patiently for the next sacrifice. The sun hung low over Arroyo Seco, its merciless rays casting long, wavering shadows across the cracked earth. Mara Silva stood at the edge of the dried-up well, the ancient stone rim scorched and crumbling beneath her fingers. Around her, the town simmered in uneasy, quiet and omnipresent tension that clung to the air like the desert heat. Her eyes, sharp and weary, traced the hollow abyss below. It was a void that had claimed so many, a darkness that had swallowed the town's children year after year, feeding an insatiable hunger that seemed as old as the desert itself. Tomas was gone now, vanished into that endless pit. And though she had clawed her way through darkness and madness to find him, the victory felt hollow. Behind her, the murmur of the town was a restless undercurrent. Some watched from dusty doorways, their faces etched with fear and resignation. Others avoided her gaze, unwilling to confront the truths she had unearthed. Mara could feel their eyes, some accusatory, some pleading, yet none dared to break the silence that had become the town's shield and prison. Her breath caught as a faint wind stirred the dust, carrying with it a whisper that seemed almost like laughter, children's laughter, distant and haunting. It was a cruel echo, a reminder of what had been lost and what remained at stake. The well, once a source of life-giving water, was now a monument to despair, a dark deity demanding endless sacrifice. Mara, a voice called softly from behind. She turned to see Elias Marquez, the town elder, stepping forward with slow, deliberate steps. His face was a map of years spent under the relentless sunlines of guilt and sorrow etched deep in his skin. He wore his dusty desert robes like armor, a symbol of the traditions that had both protected and cursed Arroyo Seco. "You're still here," Elias said, voice low but steady. "I have to be," Mara replied, her tone unwavering. "Someone has to stand against this." Elias sighed, the weight of his secrets pressing down on him. The well's hunger is old. It cannot be sated by words or rebellion alone. "Then it's time to find another way," Mara said fiercely. "We can't keep losing children, losing hope." They stood in silence, the oppressive heat wrapping around them like a shroud. Mara's gaze drifted back to the well, to the darkness that had swallowed Thomas and countless others. The hollow, one formless and endless, lurked beneath, its eyes like pits of oblivion, its thirst eternal. Nightfall came slowly, bringing a cool reprieve, but no relief. In the shadows of her small, sparse home, Mara lay awake, the visions that had plagued her since her descent into the abyss returning with relentless force. The Hollow One's insatiable hunger gnawed at her mind, twisting memories and fears into a tapestry of nightmares. The faces of the vanished children flickered like ghosts, their silence a deafening scream in the quiet room. Lucia Torres knocked softly before entering, her anxious eyes meeting Mara's. "They're waiting for you," she whispered. "Some of us want to fight back." Mara nodded, gratitude mingling with the weight of responsibility. The fragile hope that had taken root in her heart was fragile indeed, but it was enough to kindle a spark in the suffocating darkness. Outside, Benito Cruz waited by the edge of town, his rugged silhouette framed by the stars. The desert wind stirred the dust and carried the scent of dry earth and distant rain, promise unfulfilled. Together, they would face the lingering shadows, challenging a fate that had long seemed inevitable. As Mara stepped into the night, the well's silent hunger pulsed beneath her feet, reminder that the cycle was far from broken. But for the first time in years, a flicker of defiance burned bright against the dark horizon. The children of Arroyo Seco remained lost in shadow, But Mara's vow echoed through the desert air, a promise to reclaim life from the hollow depths. And somewhere, deep beneath the cracked earth, the well waited, patient and unyielding, its thirst eternal. The story was not over. Mara's footsteps echoed softly on the dry dirt as she moved through the town square, now nearly deserted under the fading stars. The air was thick with the scent of sagebrush and dust, a reminder of the relentless desert that surrounded them. She paused to look back at the well, its rim a black silhouette against the dim glow of the horizon. It was a gaping maw into oblivion, both a curse and a symbol of the town's long-held fears. "They'll come for us again," Lucia whispered beside her, voice trembling but resolute. "The well will call more children." Mara clenched her fists, the memories of Tomas's disappearance still raw and aching. "Not if we stop it," she said. Benito emerged from the shadows, his keen eyes scanning the horizon. "The desert won't give up its secrets easily," he said, "but neither will we." Together, the three stood united against the silence that had swallowed Arroyo Seco for generations. The rituals, the sacrifices, the blind faithful woven into the fabric of their lives. Mara knew the road ahead was fraught with danger and despair, but she refused to let the darkness claim another child. As dawn began to break, painting the sky with streaks of blood red and gold, Mara took a deep breath. The well awaited, endless and hungry. But so was she.